Atomic habits. You've been chasing the same goals for years. Lose weight, get rich, be more disciplined, and you keep failing at the exact same point. The best advice from every iconic book you want to read but haven't all points to the same culprit. And it's not your willpower. Goals are great, but they're just destinations. You want to be fit, wealthy, confident, or successful, but wanting those things changes nothing. What actually changes your life is the invisible machinery running in the background. James Clear calls this your system, and it's the gap between people who transform and people who stay exactly where they are. Think about how your day actually works. You wake up, and before you've even had coffee, a series of automatic decisions determine whether you'll exercise, whether you'll eat healthy, and whether you'll actually get any work done. They aren't huge choices. They're small automatic routines you do without any real thought. That's your system. Willpower is finite. It runs out. Systems are different. Systems run on autopilot whether you feel motivated or not. Tiny changes in these systems multiply over time, producing massive results, but only if those changes are stacked into your existing routines. This is habit stacking. You don't build a new system from scratch. You attach a habit you want to something you already do automatically. The first thing you do every morning is check your phone. You don't even think about it. Attach something else to that moment. Right after you check your phone, drink a glass of water. Do it every single day, and your brain learns to associate the two. They become connected. Same thing in your car. You drive to work every day, that's your anchor. While you're driving, turn on a podcast that inspires or educates you. Every time you get in the car, learning happens. Now you're not relying on willpower. It's a reflexive response. When you stack habits together and then you stack days, the person you become in a year's time is unrecognizable. It's not motivation, it's just simple math. The subtle art of not giving a f***. There's a myth that happiness means solving all your problems, but Mark Manson discovered something else. Most people spend their entire lives fighting battles that don't matter to them. The lie that's sold to you is simple. If you just fix enough problems, you'll finally be happy. Get a good job, lose the weight, find the right partner, make enough money, then peace comes. Except it doesn't work that way. Life doesn't offer happiness through problem elimination. Life is a series of problems. The only variable is which problems you're willing to tolerate. Wealthy people have problems. Fit people have problems. People in relationships have problems. The difference between someone living a fulfilling life and someone miserable isn't that one person has fewer problems. It's that they've chosen problems that align with something they actually care about. Think about someone who's obsessed with building a business. They wake up exhausted. They solve endless problems all day. They sacrifice time, money, and relationships. By every conventional measure, their life sounds like hell. But they're not miserable because they chose that struggle. Their problems feel purposeful. Identify what you're actually willing to struggle with. Not what looks good on Instagram. Not what your parents wanted. Not what sounds impressive at dinner parties, but what actually matters to you. Because you're going to suffer for it either way. Once you know what you care about, the problems that come with it stop feeling like obstacles and start feeling like information. When a marathon runner's knees hurt during training, they're not devastated. They expected it. It's part of the package. But when someone who hates running feels knee pain, it confirms they were right to quit. Owning your problems, choosing them, embracing them as part of your path is what actually makes you less miserable. Resistance only creates suffering. Acceptance creates clarity. And clarity creates the ability to actually solve what matters instead of spinning in circles trying to fix everything. The psychology of money. Your salary isn't what determines whether you'll be wealthy. Neither are your investment returns. There's something invisible happening in your bank account that matters infinitely more. Two people can make the exact same income and end up in completely different financial positions. One is building wealth, one is broke. The difference isn't how much they earn, it's what happens after the money hits their account. Morgan Housel spent years researching wealthy people, and he discovered that wealth is what you don't see. You can't take a picture of the money someone didn't spend and post it on social media. Because it's invisible, nobody talks about it. Everyone talks about the mansion, the car, and the expensive vacation. Nobody talks about the boring account balance that took decades to build. A person making $150,000 a year who spends $160,000 a year will never be wealthy. They'll work until they die. Meanwhile, a person making $50,000 a year who spends $40,000 is building wealth. The gap between what comes in and what goes out is the only thing that matters. It goes deeper than just spending less. It's about saying no to things that feel good right now so you have options later. A wealthy person isn't necessarily someone who makes twice as much as you. They're someone who decided decades ago that freedom was worth more than immediate gratification. And they kept deciding that every single day. The most dangerous phrase in personal finance is, "I deserve this." Because you might, but deserving it and being able to afford it are different conversations. Building wealth means foregoing that instant reward and finding satisfaction in the things you can't see, in the account balance growing, in the money that hasn't been spent, in the security of knowing you could leave your job if you wanted or cover that $5,000 emergency. The 7 habits of highly effective people. 90% of your stress comes from fighting things you have absolutely no control over. Stephen Covey identified exactly which battles are worth your energy and which ones are just draining you. Draw 2 circles. Inside the first circle, write down everything you can directly control: your decisions, your effort, your attitude, and your responses. This is your circle of influence. In the second circle, put everything else: the economy, other people's opinions, the weather, traffic, how other people feel. This is your circle of concern. Your entire life's energy is being split between these 2 circles, and the distribution is destroying you. This habit sounds simple, but it's radically different from how you actually live. Focus exclusively on the circle of influence and stop wasting mental energy on the circle of concern. It's harder than it sounds because the circle of concern is usually much louder. The news is screaming at you. Your boss is making decisions you disagree with. Your family is doing things you think are wrong. The world is full of problems that feel urgent and feel like your responsibility to fix. But when you pour energy into things outside your control, you get angrier, more anxious, and more helpless. And nothing changes because you were never in a position to change it. Meanwhile, the areas where you actually have leverage, like your habits, your preparation, and your response to challenges, get neglected, and your circle of influence actually shrinks. When you stop wasting energy on outrage about things you can't change, you have the bandwidth to get really good at things you can. Your decisions become sharper. Your execution becomes cleaner. People start to respect your judgment because you're not scattered trying to manage the unmanageable. Identify one thing you've been stressing about that's completely outside your control. Politics is usually a good place to start. Then make a deal with yourself to stop thinking about it. Not because you don't care, but because caring about it changes nothing. How to win friends and influence people. Dale Carnegie figured out something that makes most social advice completely backwards. The fastest way to make someone like you is to stop trying to impress them. Your instinct at a party is to talk. You want people to think you're interesting, funny, or charismatic. You've rehearsed stories. You're waiting for your moment to drop something clever. And while you're doing that, you're making people feel less important, because they're watching you perform instead of feeling heard. People like you when you make them feel valued, not when you impress them, not when you're witty. When you make them feel like what they have to say matters. This means you have to actually listen. Not listen while you mentally rehearse your next response. Actually listen. Carnegie found the people with the most friends and the deepest relationships weren't the most interesting people in the room. They were the people who asked the most questions, remembered details, and made others feel like their story was worth paying attention to. When someone tells you about their weekend, your brain wants to respond with your own weekend story. Resist that. Instead, ask a follow-up question about theirs. Who did you go with? Or, what was the best part? You just did something rare. You treated their experience like it mattered. Their brain registers this as validation, and validation creates connection faster than anything else. The second part of this is to use someone's name, not constantly, just strategically. When they finish sharing something, say, "That's a great point, Sarah," instead of just nodding. Names trigger a unique response in the prefrontal cortex, the part that handles identity. When their name is paired with acknowledgement, their brain links that dopamine hit to your face. Finally, when someone finishes talking, count to 3 before you respond. Most people jump in immediately because they're uncomfortable with silence. But silence signals respect. It signals that you actually heard them and you're considering what they said instead of just reacting. When you genuinely care about understanding someone, they sense it. They feel safer. And people who feel safe around you will move mountains for you. Not because you manipulated them, but because you made them feel seen. The 4 agreements. Someone said something critical about you recently, and you're still thinking about it. There's a reason you can't let it go, and it has nothing to do with what they actually said. A friend doesn't text back, and you assume you did something wrong. Someone's rude to you in a meeting and you replay it obsessively, convinced it's because they don't respect you. You're taking everything personally and it's poisoning your ability to function. Don Ruiz's first agreement is the most important one. Never take anything personally. The reason it's so powerful is because it's true. Other people's words and actions are expressions of their own reality, their own beliefs, and their own fears. They are not about you. This sounds obvious until you realize how much of your life you've spent convinced otherwise. Think about someone criticizing your idea in a meeting. Your immediate assumption is that they don't like you or think you're stupid. But what if they're defensive because they're territorial about their role? What if they didn't sleep well and they're irritable? What if they're having marital problems? None of that is about you. Their reaction is just how they process the world based on their baggage. This doesn't mean you ignore feedback or criticism. It means you separate the information from the judgment. Someone might say, "This idea won't work," and you can evaluate that feedback on its merits. But the emotional sting, the sense that you're being rejected or attacked, that's optional. When you take things personally, you're accepting everyone else's offhand comments, bad moods, and emotional states as evidence about your character when your character has nothing to do with them at all. The freedom comes when you realize that what other people think about you isn't your business, it's theirs. Your business is what you think about you and whether you're showing up as the person you want to be. Once you separate those two things, criticism stops feeling like an attack. It's just information, and you can take it or leave it based on whether it's actually useful or just someone having a bad day. That's 6 of the most important books you'll never have to read. 6 more are coming, including the book that teaches the most relieving thing you'll hear all year. Be sure to subscribe and don't miss part 2.